Throughout history, societies have been shaped by conditioning that led to discrimination, persecution, and violence. In South Africa, apartheid conditioned many white people to discriminate against black people. In Nazi Germany, conditioning led to the systematic genocide of Jews. In China, the Red Guards were conditioned to persecute the middle class. Today, as we explore the MK Party, we ask, what are its members and supporters being conditioned for? Welcome to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the comrades. I'm Katlego. If you find our content valuable, please don't be selfish, share it with other citizens, and support our work through a donation or joining our channel membership.
I am a politician. I think politics, I plan politics, strategy, tactics, and everything. So it's not a small matter. And I would not have tried it if I knew it was not going to work. I did so because I knew it well, for a variety of reasons, that one day when I write my book, I would tell a full story and what happened, etc.
Duduzile Zuma and MK supporters like to refer to Jacob Zuma as a sharp, smart, wise, and great chess player. He calls himself strategic. I'd like us to imagine Jacob Zuma as a chess player, moving pieces on a grand board. What's his game plan for himself, his family, and South Africa? Remember that history shows us that discrimination was not accidental. It was a deliberate strategy. Take a look at this.
These policemen were sent into Poland after the Germans marched through. And you know, it was wartime, and there was this hypothesis in Germany that the Jews in particular were operating as a fifth column and undermining the German war effort because, of course, the Germans blamed the Jews and a variety of other people for actually setting up the conditions that made the war necessary. And so when the police were sent into Poland, they were also required to make peace, roughly speaking. And so they started out by rounding up all the Jewish men between 18 and 65 and gathering them in stadiums and then shipping them off on the trains. But that isn't where they ended. They ended in a very, very dark place. I mean, these guys were going out in the field with naked pregnant women and shooting them in the back of the head by the end of their training. And what's really interesting about that is that their commander told them that they could go home at any time. So this is not one of those examples of people following orders. And the reason they didn't, roughly speaking, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons they didn't is because they didn't think it was comradely, so to speak, to leave the guys they were working with to do all the dirty work and run off. You know, and that's really an interesting fact, you know, because in different circumstances, you wouldn't think about that as reprehensible, right? You'd think, well, that's part of teamwork and under rough circumstances, and that's at least in part how they viewed it. And they were also made physically ill multiple times, physically and psychologically ill by the things that they had to do, but they kept doing them anyways. So it's one step at a time, and that's the thing, is that you end up in very bad places one step at a time, so you've got to watch those steps.
Historically, for German soldiers to mistreat Jews, they were conditioned to blame Jews for their social challenges. Similarly, Jacob Zuma and the MK Party frequently attribute challenges faced by Black South Africans to white South Africans and to South African laws. They rarely discuss improving conditions without blaming others in the same breath. Are these similarities just a coincidence, or are they part of his game plan to crank up the MK Party members and supporters for his short-term gain and long-term power? The pieces are in motion, and we left wondering, what's the game plan?
Yeah. Only if they had counted the votes of MK, there would be no problem.
Would we have a party that cares about us, though, if that was the case? If the two-thirds majority that the MK has been selling us was actually the truth, would we be well taken care of as a country? I still don't know that.
You will feel, if by now you will be feeling that we are now there.
I don't know, because I also don't agree, and I'm a little bit confused about your policies, but I'll talk to you about that in 2 seconds.
No, you shouldn't. If you're an African, you shouldn't.
I am an African. You posture left,
you are not an
but your
African.
policies are right. So I'm a little bit confused.
No.
So, exactly which votes are believed to have been taken from the MK party? The 40% that the ANC received? The DA's 20%? Or the 9% obtained by the EFF? Where did these alleged MK party votes go? Additionally, what kind of rigging is being suggested here? If the ANC were rigging the elections, why would they engineer a scenario where they still lose and achieve their lowest results ever? I'm sorry, but what kind of vote rigging is this? You rig lowering your own votes. Does that make sense? Another point to consider, the MK party, despite being only a few months old, performed remarkably well in these elections. What were their expectations going into this? Did they realistically aim for 51% in their first election, or a 2/3 majority after campaigning only for less than a year? Was their optimism justified or overly ambitious? Duduzile was clearly pleased with their performance given their relative youth as a political entity.
Obviously, we're feeling excited. We weren't expecting this, but we're very happy with it. So it shows that the people really did come out and responded to our call.
And who do you think those people are? Because you speak about silent MK voters. Who are those people?
Silent MK voters come from the ANC. There's some that voted T-shirts but voted for us. And obviously people are wanting to see change, so yes.
Perhaps the MK party expected even greater support based on assurances from people who expressed their intent to vote, people who shared MK content on social media, and those who wore MK t-shirts. However, as Duduzile points out, just as there were individuals who wore ANC t-shirts but voted for MK, it shouldn't be surprising that there were also those who wore MK t-shirts but voted for the ANC, the EFF, DA, or many other parties.
So the view that you're testing institutions of democracy to prove a point is unfair, or is it fair?
Which one? Democracy now.
The view that you're testing, the tenets that are upholding our democracy to prove a point, is that accurate? This is now obviously looking at the courts, looking at the IEC. Is that a correct assumption that, look, here's a person who's testing the very might of these institutions and their ability to do their job?
The IEC took our votes, gave them to other parties. That's not democracy. That's not democracy. The IEC said there was a crash.
Of the dashboard.
When there was no crash, when they were taking our vote, we've got evidence.
I really look forward to seeing this evidence and facts. Many South Africans have been waiting, and I hope it will be revealed very soon. The democratic process doesn't mandate the IEC to withhold results. It provides avenues for grievances to be addressed. Yet instead of the MK party correctly following these channels, there's an attempt to dictate to the IEC how to handle grievances. The MK party is not even the party in power, but hints of dictatorship tendencies are already emerging. Here, Jacob Zuma is once more sowing doubt about the IEC, about South Africa's democracy and constitution. Can you see the implications for MK members and supporters? I mean, if they researched and found legitimate concerns with the IEC and our laws, that's one thing. But blindly accepting negative narratives from Jacob Zuma and the MK party without scrutiny, that's dangerously misleading. He proceeds to paint a grim picture of South Africa's laws. Take a look at this.
I come from jail without a case. Well, the judges were angry with me because I was telling them the truth. And they took me to prison.
This is for being in contempt of the Constitutional Court.
Exactly.
For being in contempt of the Constitutional Court.
That is their own reason. Their judge was doing that thing we are talking about.
I still say to you, that one is for being in contempt of the Constitutional Court. That's how I understood it.
Here we go again. He was arrested for contempt of court, yet he insists the courts were unjust. It's a blatant lie, painting himself as a victim. What dangerous seeds are these lies sowing among his followers? How will they now regard our constitution, our courts, and the very fabric of our laws? Yes, there are problems in South Africa. We definitely have bad elements in many of our state-owned entities. I mean, Judge Hlophe was one. Jacob Zuma himself was a president that did a lot of evil things with the Guptas. Cyril Ramaphosa is another one. We have to get rid of those bad elements. But to act like the people are not the problem is a blatant lie.
Because I expected that from our judges. But they are definitely wrong, not correct.
The judges quoted the constitution of this country. Are you saying that they misinterpreted the constitution?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying.
So what next for you, now that the courts have said you cannot run as MP?
No, I'm a freedom fighter. I'm going to fight it because it's unfair, as well as it is not a democracy. Democracy brings freedom. This is not freedom.
Your own former party, should I say, prematurely ended your presidency on corruption allegations. You have not addressed that.
No, it was not on corruption allegations. Please, we are making a big mistake. There was no corruption that was ever found on me. Singing about Zuma's corruption was a lot, but who has produced anything? Do you have any evidence?
Some call it state capture.
Huh?
Some called it state capture.
No.
And some of the people who are alleged to have worked with you left this country.
I don't know what is a state capture means. Even that one, I can tell you a lot. It was all funny. I'm asking if you heard people saying, I am corrupt, what did I do? Do you have any little fact about it?
There's still cases, and next year you'll be appearing before court again.
No. Am I guilty?
Well, I am not a judge, but...
Precisely.
Imagine questioning a journalist about your guilt. You were meant to face a judge who would determine the events surrounding state capture. Instead, you avoided court when required, denying justice its due course. By evading your legal obligation, you sidestepped the chance to prove innocence or guilt. That's why you faced arrest, contempt of court for defying the order to attend and resolve your case. Did you expect them to ask you to come to court when you refused to be in court? If you disrespect the court, you go to jail. In most cases, immediately. So it's not something that is special or unique to you, sir.
It is declared that Mr. Jacob Zuma is guilty of the crime of contempt of court.
After he repeatedly failed to attend an inquiry into allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud during his time as president, the country's highest legal body, the Constitutional Court, was asked to intervene. On Tuesday, the acting Chief Justice sentenced Zuma to 15 months jail.
Mr. Jacob Zuma is ordered to submit himself to the South African Police at Nkandla Police Station or Johannesburg Central Police Station within 5 calendar days from the date of this order.
Imagine planting a tree today. You dig a hole, place a tiny seedling, and water it. But you don't expect to see a full-grown tree tomorrow. No, it takes time. It needs sunlight, nourishment, and care. Now think of Jacob Zuma and the MK party. They've sown seeds, ideas really, deep within the hearts and minds of certain South Africans. These seeds lie dormant, waiting, and every now and then, through their posts and statements, Zuma and the MK party water these seeds, casting sunlight upon them. But here's the thing. Just because we don't see the fruits yet doesn't mean they aren't growing. These seeds of deception, malice, and division are quietly taking root underground. Some hearts and minds, unfortunately, are fertile ground. They are already sprouting stems and leaves of lies, racism, and discord. So let's wake up. Let's find the citizens around us where these seeds have been planted. Armed with shovels of truth and evidence, let's uproot these seeds before they bear bitter fruits of violence, anarchy, and disunity in our beloved nation. Remember this, change doesn't happen overnight, but our actions today shape the forest of tomorrow. Spread this video everywhere. This man's agenda harms South Africa and its people. Let's unite to combat lies with truth, evil with good, and hatred with love. Together, we can make a difference. Don't forget the chaos that erupted after Jacob Zuma claimed innocence and blamed Judge Zondo and the Constitutional Court. Sensible dialogue was drowned out by the July 2021 unrest. How could chaos in the name of a guilty man be justified? Seeds of deception and division had been sown, and they bore destructive fruit. Now, are we going to sit idly by as Jacob Zuma and the MK party sow more seeds of discord among South Africans? Or will we stand up and reveal the truth about this party and its leaders to our fellow citizens? They are planting seeds of violence and chaos in explicit terms.
And also, we also want to urge our members not to act on these things, because the agitation on the ground, you would not understand it, but we are saying we had to make this statement before the final outcome of the counting of these results, so that everyone is aware of our position and how we feel about this process.
And this is taking into consideration the temperature, as he's referring to,
yes.
Which is an environment right now which is very volatile. And we can't afford from MK party to be associated with anything that would lead to that. And hence, it's important that we raise these issues on behalf of our members and behalf of civil society and say, yes, we're taking the stance. Based on what you've communicated to us, we'll communicate to the rest of the country.
Yeah, right. Of course you want love and peace. We believe you. These people you speak of, they are hostile and ready for action because of the posts from the MK party. It's because of posts from the MK party that people are so energized to take chaotic action for Jacob Zuma.
We call on our people to demand to know what happened to their votes. They have the right to know. We will therefore, at the right time, call on our people to demonstrate their dissatisfaction against all these injustices peacefully, in the streets, in the courts, and even in Parliament until our grievances have been addressed.
So it's your grievances, but you'll be calling ordinary South Africans to demonstrate for your grievances. Yeah, ne? These statements may sound innocent, but really, they are not.
If that happens, people will be provoking us, because we know what we are talking about. We are not guessing. We know. And why should they rush to count? And I'm hoping whoever is responsible is hearing what we are saying. Don't start trouble when there is no trouble.
What type of talk is this? Is this talk of a party that loves peace and unity in South Africa? So the results from the election must satisfy you. What about the ANC? What about the DA? What about the EFF? These parties lost or didn't move at all. Should they also not be satisfied? Most of us have moved on and are satisfied. I wanted the ACDP, Action SA, IFP and DA to win, but they didn't. I have moved on. I want the results to satisfy me, but they didn't. But that doesn't mean there was vote rigging, does it? Here is more proof that their mission and desire is not for South Africa to move forward.
All right, leading our bulletin this hour, the Mkhonto weSizwe Party has filed urgent papers at the Constitutional Court to interdict Friday's first sitting of the National Assembly.
Now, this comes after the party's letter of demand to the Secretary of Parliament and Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, asking them not to convene the first sitting, did not yield results.
Anyway, in case the seeds of lies were also sown in your heart and mind, let's uproot them with this truth.
think you have named all the major obstacles that the MK faces. It has not actually followed the procedure that the Electoral Act sets out for if it has a problem with any specific result. That was needed within 2 days. It didn't do it. It hasn't provided any of the evidence. So that's the first problem. Secondly, the Constitution itself requires that the first sitting of Parliament be within 14 days of the election. That would be this coming Sunday, if not this coming Friday. So you would need a very, very good reason for the Constitutional Court to even entertain both ignoring the actual legislative process for contesting an election result and to ignore the Constitution itself. So I think, much as one shouldn't forecast, I think it is likely that the Constitutional Court will not even admit the interdict application onto the roll, won't even hear them.
And indeed, as the law dictates, the MK party failed to block the National Assembly from taking place.
The Constitutional Court has refused to grant the interdict to halt the first sitting of the National Assembly on Friday. The Mkhonto weSizwe party that sought to block the first sitting.
Since they failed to block the National Assembly, they hoped or lied that if they were not present at the National Assembly, a quorum would not be reached and the National Assembly could not proceed. But unfortunately for them, they were wrong.
As a result, your 58 MPs, are they going to Parliament? Are they not going? How long will they not go if they're not going?
No. If there is a law that says if there is no, what is it called?
Which one? I don't know what you're referring to. You must tell me. If there's a law that is called what? Are we speaking about the election of a president, the speaker? Are we speaking about the declaration of the elections?
Of course, yes.
Which one are we going to?
Be done when
the declaration.
When there is a huge number that is not in Parliament.
Or the election of a president, yes, it can be done.
Can.
130 MPs need to be in that house. There will be 130 without your 58.
No.
I'm willing to take a bet on that one with you.
If there are chairs that are empty,
there'll be quorum.
There's no quorum.
Are you going to take other MPs from other parties and ask them not to attend?
We are all complaining. It's not only me.
But the parties that are complaining alongside you are parties that are Busara, that are 4,000 votes, ACT, that's got how many? 13,000. The parties that are complaining are not in Parliament. They're not in seats.
Our membership, if MK is not there, there's no quorum in Parliament.
I beg to differ, but let's wait and see.
Let's wait and see.
If I'm right, what happens?
I've been in Parliament, my dear.
I haven't been, but I feel like I'm right.
I've been there before.
If I'm right, what happens? And if I'm right?
I'll give you a cow.
Oh my God! I want my cow. Because I know you want me.
He confidently started off by telling us how he's a seasoned politician. But here, a journalist seems to know more about matters of politics, of the National Assembly and what constitutes quorum more than him. Guys, this old man he needs a break. He needs rest. He needs to just step aside for a minute. I think sometimes he really cannot believe how people have fallen for him. I can't find another word, but clown seems like the right one for now. He seems like a joke. I'm not sure if after over 60 years in politics, he genuinely does not understand how these things work, or if he is counting on the ignorance of South Africans. Again, another proof of how we as citizens should not just accept what we hear politicians say, but rather do a quick Google search to get the context and facts about the topic at hand. I learned about the word quorum a few years ago, and I spent time to make sure I understood what it meant in the context of the things that I was doing back then. But for a president to not even... Hey, never mind. Take a look at this.
Because Initially, when I interviewed the Mkhonto we Sizwe political party spokesperson, he did mention that the party is looking into boycotting the sitting of the National Assembly, and therefore there won't be a quorum there won't be a quorum, and therefore the National Assembly wouldn't be able to sit. This is a similar argument that they are making now as well. But then later on, in an interview with the SABC, he said that actually the political party members will go, the 58 members will go to Parliament for the swearing-in ceremony. Then yesterday, the news broke that actually they will not be going anymore because of the reasons that have been stipulated before. So comes in the conversation and the debate around what does the Constitution of the National Assembly mean in terms of Section 46 of the Constitution, and what does a quorum mean in terms of Section 53, subsection 1b of the Constitution?
Thank you. And it's an important question. 46 is about the composition of the National Assembly. It's about how many seats there should be in the National Assembly. When the Constitution was first drawn up, the parties couldn't agree, the negotiating parties couldn't agree on the size of the National Assembly. So they said it has to be there have to be between 350 and 400 seats. The Electoral Act latest settled that at 400 seats. So that's the composition, that's how many seats we have. The question of quorum is covered, as you said, in Section 53, and that's how many of the seats need to be filled before the National Assembly can make a decision. And the decision that has to be made on Friday, which is electing the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and President, for that you need only a third of the seats to be filled. So we're looking at about 134 seats. So the absence of the 59, I think, members of the MK is not going to make the slightest bit of difference in a 400-seat parliament. Yep.
So we have a party that does not understand the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which they are meant to uphold. It appears that either Dalimpofu and the other legal advisors to the MK party lack a firm grasp of the law and the Constitution, or the MK party is deliberately turning a blind eye to the facts. They are deliberately misrepresenting the facts in order to mislead its members and supporters about the Constitution and legal processes. South Africans, especially Black South Africans, seem to love fools, unfortunately. If not fools, then it's people that abuse or hate knowledge. Information is not sought after to be understood. It is taken by these leaders and twisted or broken in order to fit their own narrative. Listen to this. He's said to be one of the best lawyers, but guys, I don't see the hype. I'm sorry, but I don't. We grew up hearing about this guy, Dalimpofu, and this is the best we have. No way. There's no way. I refuse.
To just give a brief outline, because we've had so many cases, there's been a multiplicity of cases in such a short space of time. The legal team will give a comprehensive advice to the clients, and the matters that are involved in that legal advice of the pursuance of these matters, both locally or internationally, pertain to two important matters. One of them is the setting aside of the election as a whole, and which, if successful, will therefore be followed by a re-election within 90 days. The second matter pertains to the removal from the list or from the membership of the National Assembly of former President Zuma, which we believe that was not done in accordance with international norms, particularly because in that particular case, as you know, those who followed it, the Constitutional Court made findings, including one of the findings was that remission of sentence does not reduce a sentence. and that the IEC is entitled to administer the membership of the National Assembly. And it is a strong feeling of the clients that both of those matters are in violation not only of our Constitution, but also of international human rights instruments. And therefore, thank you. And therefore, those are the matters that will be pursued further. What this application is about is the separate issues of declaring, in terms of Section 172 of the Constitution, certain conduct of the IEC, that is the rushed declaration of results, to be unconstitutional, setting such conduct aside as just and equitable remedies, and giving a proper constitutional interpretation to Section 46 of the Constitution. That's the one that deals with the composition.
In the aftermath of the 2024 elections, the MK party actions and statements beg the question, what exactly is their game plan? Are they genuinely confused about legal and constitutional matters, or are they strategically pretending ignorance to incite their loyal supporters? This behavior raises concerns about their true intentions. Could it be that the MK party is deliberately conditioning its members and supporters to oppose the South African government, its law and constitution? Add their racist comments to that, and one wonders if they are not deliberately conditioning their members and supporters to blame and hate white South Africans and all people who oppose their agenda. Imagine if, with the influence he has, Jacob Zuma would be on the side of truth, love, and unity. How great would that be? While we wait for that day to happen, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to share the video far and wide so that those seeds of deception and division can be uprooted and replaced with those of truth and unity. All for the well-being of South Africa and all her people. I'm Katlego. This is Citizen Concerned, and until next time, beware of the comrades.